No, he is covered in barbed wire. He is the one, the only Jay Hood. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? It's so good to be back on the show again. You can follow us on Twitter at GKW_wrestling. And of course, Good Karma Wrestling is on Instagram as well. We have got a lot to talk about. I have some angst, got some AEW angst. I can't wait for ROH to be back on the scene again. SummerSlam right around the corner. So we got a lot to discuss.
Yeah, with SummerSlam right around the corner, let's go ahead and start there. What is your current interest level in SummerSlam? So right now they have 8 matches booked, and we're a little over a week away. It's going to be the 30th, so we're 9 days away from SummerSlam in Nashville. We have Reigns versus Lesnar for the undisputed Universal title, McAfee versus Corbin, Lashley versus Theory for the U.S. title, Usos versus the Street Profits for the undisputed tag team championships with special guest referee Jeff Jarrett, which was an interesting decision. We'll get to that in a moment. We have for the SmackDown women's titles, we have Liv Morgan versus Ronda Rousey, Riddle versus Rollins, Raw women's championship rematch between Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch, and then booked Monday night on Raw, Logan Paul will be taking on The Miz after The Miz initially turned it down, but The Miz, much like if you've ever seen Back to the Future, if you call someone a chicken, they then have to accept it. So in the WWE, if you say somebody has tiny balls, they then have to accept your challenge, which is how we got Logan Paul versus The Miz in 9 days.
Well, let's go to Jeff Jarrett since you went there. Jeff Jarrett, the special referee for the Usos in their matchup against the Street Profits. And when that announcement took place by Adam Pearce, we got a special guest referee, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Jarrett. They showed the video package, and it went over like a fart in church. It's like, okay, so you booked someone who is shorter and smaller than the 4 competitors in the match. Because we all know that Jeff Jarrett is this big guy that is going to want law and order in this matchup. He's only doing it because he's going to be in Nashville. It's the only reason why he's booked, because Bruce Pritchard told Vince, hey, I got an idea. What about Jeff Jarrett, who's in Nashville, won't cost much, he's already busy that weekend. Let him be the referee. And it's kind of like, that didn't resonate at all. If I'm a fan in the stands at that time, I'm thinking, Jeff Jarrett, the guy that got beat by China for the Intercontinental Championship, that guy, that Jeff Jarrett? Please.
Well, and they just put him in the Hall of Fame not that long ago. But like, it just didn't make any – I don't understand how this makes any sense for Jeff Jarrett to be the special guest referee here. Honestly, 2 weeks ago on Raw, when they had R-Truth come out, like it made more sense to have R-Truth be the special guest referee. It just because he's there, and like I think you could make it make sense and make R-Truth maybe a little bit more serious versus the comedy character he's been playing for the last 5 years, which certainly has a role on WWE programming. But like, of all the people to pull out of the woodwork, Jeff Jarrett just doesn't. It just doesn't. I can't make it make sense. I understand everything you just said, Jay Hood. I understand that you just, oh yeah, those things make sense. He's in Nashville. He's not going to cost that much. But like, why? Why is Jeff Jarrett a better option than regular WWE officials? Because the story that they're telling here just doesn't make any sense either. I know they've had the 2 botched finishes. There's been shoulders up. So that's what's led to complaining. So special guest referee Richard Jefferson is better than the regular referee in the NBA? Like, oh, these guys messed up. But if we bring in a Hall of Famer, that's how you know. So, like, Triple H, is he going to be – I know Triple H has done wrestling, but, like, is he going to be a special guest referee because he's better than all the other referees that they have? Like, it just doesn't – at the end of the day, I always come back to this, Jay Hood. At the end of the day, I can suspend disbelief pretty far when it comes to pro wrestling.
Right.
Pretty far. But, like, the fact that some guy who's not around and not really a part of your programming is a better ref than the people that are doing it every week, that just doesn't make sense to me.
No, listen, guest referees have been part of professional wrestling going back years and years and years ago. It's as old as the hills. Find a guest referee, and that person is supposed to be an enforcer. That's what it's supposed to be, someone bigger than life or a celebrity, something like that. Jeff Jarrett does not resonate with today's audience. Look, he's got a podcast, sure. And yes, he does have a legacy. His family's got a legacy in Tennessee, sure. But it just, because of the name, it's kind of like, so what's Jeff Jarrett going to do that other officials cannot? I understand the story of like, okay, we need someone else because our referees are screwing up. But I'll tell you what, over the last, I would say 3 or 4 weeks, we've noticed there's been a lot of botches by the officials on purpose. I'm sure part of the storyline. So that's why they have Jeff. But usually it's a bigger than, someone that's not used to being in wrestling, someone that knows how to count to three, someone that will be able to pop Hollywood, something like that, or ESPN. But it just doesn't make sense when it's Jeff Jarrett, though, because I'm not sure what Jeff can do that, say, Charles Robinson can't.
Or it's somebody who, is clearly going to be slanted on one side. I think of when Mike Tyson was a special guest referee at WrestleMania. You think he's going to be on one side, then he goes to the other side. And, he ends up getting involved in the match. Like if Jeff Jarrett gets involved in the match, I honestly don't know what side he would pick, or if he's just going to be like a referee and counting three. It just doesn't make sense. I think of when Shawn Michaels was a special guest referee for Undertaker Triple H at WrestleMania. That made sense with the story that they were telling, because it was the end of an era thing. It wasn't really the end of an era, but it was a nice little story that they told with that WrestleMania match. And then, HBK gets involved and he tries to help Triple H get over the Undertaker and get revenge after the Undertaker beat him back-to-back years and essentially ended his career in WWE. I'm pretending, much like Rocky V, the match in Saudi Arabia never happened for Shawn Michaels.
Of course.
So, but those are the special guest referees that I think of. Like, and I can make it make sense in my head. These Jeff Jarrett just appearing out of nowhere with no ties to either side. I guess that leaves the impression of impartiality, but I just feel like that this was a strikeout. Like they could have done better. Like, honestly, if you're just going to have someone random do it, why not just pay Stone Cold to come up and be a special guest referee again? Try to run back the nostalgia of him giving everyone stunners and drinking Steve Weisers at the end. Like, okay, if we're going to do that, then take the biggest swing you can take.
He'd be glad to do it. I think that, yes, the guest referee is strange, but I think that the bottom line will be, at the end of this match, I think this is where we'll get the split. I think this is what happens with Montez Ford and Dawkins. At least the beginning of the split, maybe not the split at SummerSlam, but there'll be an issue because I think the Usos are going to get over, and Montez Ford will look at Dawkins and go, dude, I'm Shawn Michaels, you're Marty Jannetty. And there's going to be the beginning of, because we have speculated this on GKW a number of times. We see Montez Ford, man, and he's getting big. 20 to 25 pounds of muscle. He looks very impressive. And this is not a shot at Dawkins, because Dawkins is stepping up his game too, but you could tell that Ford's getting his body tuned up to have a solo run here.
And Dawkins had a good match on Monday night. Like, and then obviously with the story they were telling, the Usos' arm was up. Jimmy's arm was up shoulder, when they ended the match, so they could continue the story to get double J, E, double F, J, A, double R, E, double T involved in the match. What else? What are you actually excited for SummerSlam? Like when you look at those 8 matches, what are you going, yeah, that's the match that I think is going to be the one that I'm most excited for?
Okay, so Riddle and Rollins are going to steal the show. That's what's going to happen. Riddle and Rollins are going to steal, because some forget how good Riddle is. Enough with, aside from the whole thing with Randy and Randy being his best friend and he misses him, besides the histrionics, Riddle can go. And we're going to see, I think, a terrific match between the two. We already know that Rollins is as classic as well as a wrestler. So those two will steal the show. I'm also interested, though, in Bianca and Becky to see how this is going to materialize. If you listen to Monday Night Raw and the promo that Bianca and Becky did, Bianca laid it out. It's like, when I was at SummerSlam last year, you embarrassed me. You beat me in less than 30 seconds. You came out of nowhere and you won. And it made me bad. So now I'm the champion in this situation and you're the challenger. I like the way this has been able to be laid out. Sometimes we criticize the creative. I think that they've told a great story between these two. I think they're going to have a terrific match.
Yeah, and I like the story they've told with Becky as well, where she kind of like hit bottom after she lost that title and had to work her way back, and she felt she was getting screwed, and she's had to, win some matches. She won her feud ultimately with Asuka and has really built momentum coming into the SummerSlam match. McAfee versus Corbin, like that's like going to, even though that seems like the least stakes out of all of them, and I know they led SmackDown with it last week, like I think that's going to be sneaky good, just because at this point I feel like McAfee is still being underrated a little bit by the outside, even though we've seen him the 2 matches he did in NXT. We saw him at WrestleMania. Like, we know this guy can go, and Corbin can sneakily go as well. I think that one kind of has a little bit of potential to me as well, because look, I mean, we already saw Lashley versus Theory. It'll be fine. I'm really curious about Reigns versus Lesnar because we talked about, I'm just curious how this is going to play out because we talked about after WrestleMania, how it was, man, that was such a quick match. It was just over like that because typically if Lesnar's going to lose, he's going to lose quickly and get out of there. Like that's how this run for him. He's gone. He hasn't lost much. When he has, it's happened quickly. Sometimes they play it off as a surprise, like when he lost to Goldberg. But I don't see him winning this match. And last man standing implies that it has to be a longer match. So I'm really curious to see how they kind of mash those two things of last man standing being longer. Lesnar's probably not going to win, so it's going to be a shorter match, how those two things kind of mesh together. Like, I'm not intrigued to see, like, the match itself. I'm just curious how they tell that story.
Well, let's look at it from this standpoint. If Lesnar wins, do you really want to have two singles heavyweight champions that are part-time? It's for the Universal Championship. It's not winner take all.
I believe it's winner take all. I think it's for everything.
I'd say Universal Championship. Either way, we're getting a part-time champion out of this, whether it's Lesnar or Roman Reigns. Reigns has had some house shows. I've not seen Lesnar on any of the house shows. He pops up on Raw or SmackDown every now and then. But ultimately, the WWE failed in this. We've covered this because they failed. Instead of having someone to be able to carry the torch as a heavyweight champion, they didn't do that. What they decided to do is put everything on Reigns. Reigns shows up in certain cities, shows up on television every now and then, and he just kind of goes away. Just like how fans were frustrated with Brock Lesnar. They're like, Brock only shows up for the pay-per-views, only for the big ones. But at the same time, you don't build your roster enough to be able to say, here's a top 10, build toward main event matches against Brock. They haven't done that. They just go right back to the same well, Gabe, of Reigns versus Lesnar.
Well, and it's the same playbook from when Brock was champion because Paul Heyman's around. So then Paul Heyman, and yes, they have the Usos as well. So, the bloodline is being represented on both shows because the bloodline was on SmackDown this last week since they have both the tag team champions. Excuse me, they're on Raw this last week since they're the tag team champions as well. But then you also have Paul Heyman trying to plot in the back. So like Reigns is kind of present. They try to get away with, okay, Roman Reigns is kind of here because his special counsel is here, even though he himself is not in the building tonight, which is the same thing they used to do with Brock Lesnar. And the problem is they've hijacked both championships. And I know we're going to get into this in a little bit because we're going to talk about ROH. We're going to talk about Dynamite last night. And like, both the major wrestling promotions have championship issues. There are way too many championships, and it's hard to keep track of everything, especially with all the ROH titles floating around in AEW. And WWE has hijacked most of their championships to the point where it's like, these people gave up whatever life to be a fighter to ultimately try to fight for some of these championships. And they're just hijacking both their championships, the WWE title and the Universal Championship, by what they've done with Roman Reigns. And I honestly wish, Jay Hood, when you said, oh, it's just for the Universal title, right? Like, I wish, because then Lesnar might actually win. And at least you have the splits and somebody can, at least somebody might beat one of them, probably Lesnar before Reigns, and we at least have one champion who's around for a while. If Theory cashes in, at least we have a champion who's around on WWE programming.
If Theory cashes in, the show's over. I'm talking about our show.
Cashes in and wins. Cashes in and wins.
No. Yes, if he cashes in and wins, you sell that shirt as a novelty. that Good Karma Wrestling shirt, we once had a show that was good. It didn't last 20 episodes because Theory became the champion, and we decided enough of the show. No more Good Karma Wrestling.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that little clown be the heavyweight champion. That's too much too soon. But you know what? With WWE, you just never know. But again, we're here to suspend disbelief. So if Brock can't get it done, Theory can against Roman Reigns. That makes no sense. No sense.
Yeah, I can't make it make sense either. And I think honestly, he probably holds on to it for a while. And we know where they're going from here. They've pushed off on SmackDown because there's probably going to be. I mean, they have 8 matches currently. They're going to add to this list. Ultimately, I think Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus is going to end up on SmackDown. They've advertised for it the last 2 SmackDowns, and then he ends up fighting one of the cronies. I can't imagine he ends up fighting on free television for a chance to fight at the next pay-per-view. That makes sense as a SummerSlam match of Sheamus versus McIntyre, so that'll get added here. We know McIntyre versus Roman at Clash at the Castle makes sense. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with a part-time champ holding both belts.
Don't forget, we had to make this announcement. If you have not heard, Gabe, Brian, and I, we will have a special pop-up GKW Saturday Night is the name of the show. GKW Saturday Night. We will be on after SummerSlam in Nashville, Tennessee. So once you watch that pay-per-view, come on over right here to your friends at Good Karma Wrestling. We will break down that show for you on a special Good Karma Wrestling Saturday night after SummerSlam. Come right here to YouTube or catch the podcast of our review of SummerSlam.
All right, I'm excited to get into the 3 count, something we do here on GKW each and every week. We hit our top story, and then because wrestling is 1, 2, 3 to win, well, the 3 count are the other top 3 stories that we have. And we begin with number 1, Dynamite from last night. What was the biggest surprise? You had Chris Jericho winning the barbed wire everywhere match. We saw the return of Jungle Boy last night as well. What was your biggest takeaway, Jonathan Hood? And I'm excited for this because when I opened up the chat right before we jumped on, you're shaking your head and you're telling me you got takes. So please unleash your Dynamite takes from last night.
Ladies and gentlemen, we won't get to 2 and 3 because we're going to be locked in on this for a while. Neophyte booking. Last night's show, AEW Dynamite, was the drizzling shits. It was bad, and let me explain why. There's a lot of reasons why. I'll start off first with someone named Cole Carter taking on Ricky Starks for the FTW Championship. Okay, who's Cole Carter?
I don't know.
Oh, you know, like here's the thing. Hey, Gabe, I didn't know either. I didn't know who he was either. So I looked it up, right? So
okay.
An NXT reject who failed a drug test at NXT and was let go because he failed a drug test, and you put him on TV? You put him on TV, why? And here's the other thing, too. An NXT guy, apparently he had a couple of matches or maybe 1 or 2 matches on AEW Dark Evolution, whatever
Elevation, yeah,
Elevation.
Sure.
Okay, all right, so you give him 10 minutes of time on Dynamite? Valuable real estate on Dynamite. You give him 10 minutes. And by the way, Ricky Starks wrestled circles around him. He was not ready for that spotlight. He did not look good in that matchup. Why give this guy 10 minutes against Ricky Starks at NXT? And then the promo before that, if you remember that, what did Ricky Starks said? Hey, last time we saw you swimming with the fishes. And it's kind of like, I didn't get it when I was watching. I'm like, What does that mean? Oh, he was at NXT. So you're taking a shot at NXT. It's like, but you give this guy, you have at least 20 people in the back that wrestle on Dark and these YouTube shows that you could have gave him an opportunity. You take this NXT reject, you put him on your show, wasting my time for 10 minutes. The match wasn't even that good. So that's one issue.
Well, one of the biggest complaints, obviously, about Dynamite is how inside it gets. If you're so inside to the point where I watch so much pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. You know, I can't catch it all at all times, so I miss this guy in NXT. If I happen to catch NXT on occasion, doesn't happen all that often. But if you're so inside that Jay Hood, me, and maybe Broich knew who he was, and he would have been the one of the 3 of us hosting the show. But that's way too inside. We're not casual fans. Just somebody turning on Dynamite on Wednesday night going, who the hell is this guy and how are they making these jokes? You're making your fans work way too hard with the lack of explanation. If even that's just suspending disbelief to the point of, okay, you've made the decision to put him on television. Okay, why are you putting him on television? You made 0 effort and 0 explanation as to why he was there.
Okay, how about Jon Moxley and Yuta against the Best Friends? Now, I'm a big fan of Yuta, and I think that he's an upcoming star for this company along with Jon Moxley. we already mentioned, I think, as a show that we really like the Blackpool Combat Club, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're a big fan of it. Okay, so on one match, what we see two pile drivers on Yuta. And thank God that you had William Regal, who is the best color analyst in that company, by the way, even though he only does like one match a show. He explained, if you listen very closely,
Yep.
we worked with Yuta to be able to move his neck so he doesn't take the full impact of the pile driver. He had to explain how bad that was, that Yuta had to take two pile drivers and still stay in the match. Well, we work on him to make sure his neck does not get the full impact of the pile driver. That was brilliant on the part of Regal to explain how awful that was, that you get two pile drivers and you kick out at two.
Yeah. No, I did. And it was a decent match up to that point. And yeah, I love the BCC. They really haven't had much of a direction since Daniel Bryanson got hurt. Or Bryan Danielson, excuse me. Until once he got oh, Daniel Bryan, there he is. But I mean, they haven't. Ever since he got hurt, they really haven't had much of a direction. I know Mox is the interim champ, which, by the way, like I don't know if this made your notes, but I found it baffling that the interim champ. I now understand that Eddie Kingston's his buddy, but like it's the first time I've seen the champion be used as like a backup singer as he comes in as one of the reinforcements at the end of the show. I just thought that was weird. You know, like he's the champ. Shouldn't he? Yeah. Shouldn't you act like he's the champ? Like he's a much bigger deal, and people love him. Like people love it when Moxley comes out, but like him coming in at the end of that barbed wire everywhere match just didn't make a ton of sense to me either. I'm sure you will eventually get to that complaint amongst your long list of complaints last night from Dynamite, but you brought up the BCC, so I figured that's longer than your list of Jeff Cobb. That's an inside joke, but that's longer than your Jeff Cobb question list.
Evan Cohen will love this yellow pad. He loves the yellow pad. This is all Dynamite, by the way. All of this is Dynamite. No, okay. So, like I said, I don't know if we'll get to 2 and 3. I'm so pissed off that I wasted 2 hours on Wednesday, Gabe. I really am. Okay. And by the way, Chuck Taylor sucks. You ever watch a match and you thought, man, Chuck Taylor, he's just so over. I mean, like, go back and watch that match. What did Chuck Taylor do that you're like, man, outside of a pile driver? He's such a waste of space. I don't get it. Okay. We learned on Dynamite from Duluth, Georgia.
Okay, Jared.
Not Atlanta. Duluth, Georgia. That Christian Cage is faster than Jungle Boy. You see him go up the stairs? Did you see that at the afterbirth where Christian Cage is running away from Jungle Boy, and Jungle Boy is having to run slower just so Christian Cage can get away. Jungle Boy was not supposed to catch Christian Cage, but Cage is so slow that Jungle Boy was like 2 or 3 steps below, so he wouldn't catch up to Christian Cage. I love what could be a little bit of a switcheroo in the part of Luchasaurus. Maybe he is back with Jungle Boy. I don't know. I like that though.
I did like that. I would like them to explain a little bit more. I've been waiting for an explanation about why Luchasaurus, because I was at the show in Milwaukee when like Luchasaurus came out and was red hot at Christian Cage, and Christian Cage, yells out, "You remember what happened to Marco?" And all of a sudden he stops, but there hasn't been any explanation as to why Luchasaurus decided to align himself with Christian Cage. So I hope that we get some sort of explanation. I know they're not going to give him a microphone and let him cut a 3 to 4 minute promo as to why, but maybe, Jungle Boy can have that explanation if those two are indeed back together. And Luchasaurus is making heel and face turns quicker than the Big Show. But those two together makes a ton of sense to me. It always has. Like, I think like, you don't have to break those two up in order for Jungle Boy to become a single star. I think that's one thing that AEW has done. Whereas we just talked about how Dawkins, for whatever reason in WWE, for the most part, you have to break away. It's in the very limited examples, like when they did not make the New Day break up for Kofi Mania, and Kofi was champ, and they still had those guys. But for Big E, he couldn't be around the other two guys. They had to send him to a different brand when he became champion last year. So, for the most part, that's what WWE does. But you look at, Jericho was a part of a faction when he was champ. Currently, the interim champ is part of a faction in AEW. So you don't have to break away from the group, your tag team partner, to have individual success in AEW. So personally, just as a fan of those two, I hope they are indeed back. And I am always excited to see Jungle Boy back because he is one of the bright young stars in AEW.
I totally agree with that. Because you're in the Atlanta area, it's Black Hollywood, so you're going to see Jermaine Dupri stop by. You're going to have Kevin Gates stop by. All right, cool. Okay, so this is where AEW is trying to be WWE light. And I'm so disappointed in this company because the things that you did not like that the WWE does over and over and over again, now you're implementing this in your company. So we have to have for Swerve and Keith Lee the championship celebration. Where have we heard that before, Gabe Neitzel? A championship celebration.
It's wait, I think have they done those in WWE? I think I've seen one or two of those previous. And then someone comes out to interrupt them. It never goes uninterrupted. I can tell you that right now.
I mean, and when I saw that as a preview, I'm like, really? You can't do any better than a championship celebration for Swerve and My Glory. Okay, great. So Kevin Gates is there. I know who Kevin Gates is. I didn't know he was going to be at ringside. And so here is Tony Nese, and he's right there at ringside with Smart Mark Sterling. Here's something I don't understand either. So why is there a petition for Swerve? Why is he going around the locker room asking for a petition to get rid of Swerve? Because that's just the dumbest storyline they've got going right now. Well, so you think that petition is going to get rid of half of the tag team champions because you don't want them around?
Yeah, pretty much.
What does that mean? What's it for? What's the petition for?
Because he was, I can't even remember how it started. Like, I think he was unsafe or he did something to him months ago, and it's been going on. Honestly, when I see Smart Mark Sterling, I kind of tune out in my own head. Like, okay, here's this guy. I really don't care. I honestly kind of like tune out and stop listening.
Wow, that's go away heat then. Then that's not good either.
No.
Like, right. So it's a go away heat. So all I remember is Swerve threw Keith Lee over the top rope in a battle royal.
Yep.
And they were not happy with one another. They're back together because they're tag team champions. But this whole thing, they should have dropped this weeks ago. But here's what I want to get to with you, and that is Kevin Gates. So Kevin Gates knocks Tony Nese on his ass with a 1-inch punch. Knocks him down. Now it's everywhere. It's all in the hip hop, magazines and the websites and everything else, XXL, all these places. And that's great. But it's like you did that to Tony Nese. If you're going to do that, shouldn't you do that to somebody with some heat? Tony Nese has done pretty much nothing in AEW. So you punch him in the face for what? When we've seen celebrities knock out or mess with a superstar, usually that superstar has some heat. Dolph Ziggler comes to mind, who got knocked on his ass. The Miz got knocked on his ass. Or Floyd Mayweather with brass knucks breaking the nose of the Big Show. At least he's someone. Who's Tony Nese? A guy that can work, but doesn't have like this supreme heat where it's like, yeah, I'm going to knock out Tony Nese. So you knocked out a guy that we see on Dark.
Yeah.
And Rampage. What did that do for the company? It did a lot for the hip hop community. What did it do for AEW?
Didn't do anything for Swerve and Our Glory. Like, they became an afterthought in their own championship celebration.
And, of course, the cake spot, because you got to have the cake spot.
Well, I mean, naturally. I mean, there was a cake there, Like, is there anything more obvious in pro wrestling? When you see a cake, you're like, well, somebody's going to end up with that in their face. Like, it's like the oldest pro wrestling trope that there is. Like, 99% of the times you see a table get set up, someone's going to go through it. Every once in a while. But no, 100% of the time you see a cake, that cake's ended up in somebody's face.
I love that. I love Gabe saying, "Oh, naturally, cake spot, of course, naturally." You're right. It happens all the time. It's as old as Father Time. The cake spot in wrestling. God Almighty. And then, of course, let's talk about Jericho and Kingston. What'd you think?
So the match itself, for a barbed wire match, and this is what AEW has done. My issue with this is now we have had two blow-off type of matches in this feud. And I don't know if we're done. Like, I honestly don't know if we're done. Because you would think that the feud would have been over after a blood and guts match, their version of War Games. Well, nope, that wasn't it, because Eddie Kingston, and they actually did a decent job of in real time, Eddie Kingston being pissed at Claudio Castagnoli for being the one who got the tap out, because Eddie Kingston wanted to make Jericho tap out. So he still needed to get this match. Okay, that makes sense. He Eddie Kingston's crazy. He wants to make sure he gets his revenge. It's not about the overall picture. It's a very small picture with Eddie, sure. So they set up this barbed wire everywhere match. And the match itself, I liked the fact that Eddie took, nice little touch having the barbed wire on Justin Roberts' microphone. So you start there, and the barbed wires everywhere. If you're not a fan of barbed wire matches, you're not going to be. I thought this was a fun one until we got to the schmozzy finish. It was just overbooked beyond belief. And then and it's not that I have a problem with Eddie taking the loss. It's very quickly after taking the loss in a brutal match, recovering like that so he can throw Jericho through a bed of barbed wire. And the whole thing was overbooked. They tried to make both of them look good at the end by having Kingston take the loss, but then still stand tall at the end of Dynamite. So I don't know if the feud's over. I don't know if it's going to continue next week on Dynamite or not. It shouldn't, because again, I don't know how much higher you go than barbed wire everywhere. So it's just disappointing, because there was a lot of potential within the match. And then at the end, as they're, JR's wishing everybody a good night from Atlanta, even though they were in Duluth, you're just going, wait, what the hell just happened? I was feeling good. I was feeling excited. And then, that ending was kind of meh.
I did not like that at all. I did not like it at all. And it's like, hey, I've seen all kind of different wrestling. The barbed wire is supposed to be the blow off, but you make the great point of saying, well, it's the blow off, but is it really? It should be the blow off, but who knows? So here's the thing, and Vikram just chimed in with my next point. Never give Ty Conti a key to open up a lock. I mean, so you got the Jericho Appreciation Society in a shark cage, which is dumb, because if in a real shark cage in wrestling lore, that thing's hiked up 30 feet into the air. Usually that is the case. It was not the case. And so Ty Conti has the key. She knocks out Ruby Soho, and then she's got the key, and she's trying to open up this thing and open up the thing, and to the point where one of the guys from the Jericho Society pull the lock over so he can unlock it. And on top of that, those plastic bars, because a couple of those guys went right through the bars.
Went right through them. They just went right through them. Well, because, and she took so long, I do not blame a couple of those guys, because, again, you're running to the end of television time. You can't, all of this, I'm curious to know if anybody that is watching this show right now live, if you want to throw it in the chat, if you were there last night, or if you know if somebody was there, because I want to know what was going on in the ring. Because by the time they eventually got away from that, there was a cover, but it didn't look like Aubrey Edwards was going for the count. It just looked like, because they couldn't get that open, it threw off the timing of some stuff, which is why some of those guys are like, we just got to go beat the crap out of Eddie Kingston, because that's what we have to do right now. Screw it. I'm going through these bars.
I mean, going through the bars, shark cage, something that you're not supposed to get out of. The thing is supposed to be 30 feet in the air, and it's very convenient for Ty Conti. And as soon as we heard that Ruby had the key, I'm like, there's going to be something here. Did we need the Anna Jay turn? I couldn't care less about that. All I know is that Ty Conti running down the ramp, and she knocks out Ruby, and she can't even open the lock, right? Sammy, and then, of course...
So why was Sammy Guevara not in the shark cage? Is he not a part of Jericho Appreciation Society?
That's right. Why was he not in the shark cage? See? Now, if you're Eddie Kingston, you do the count, right? Okay, you. Okay, where's Sammy Guevara? Come on down, Sammy, because you're part of this as well. And Sammy interferes. That's why it was just the shits. Okay, I just think that was just one of the worst things we've seen on Dynamite. Really, as far as a main event attraction,
it was just overbooked.
I'm sure this is a Jericho idea, some of the stuff that they walked through, but the execution was just bad.
Yeah, the execution was terrible. You can't. Again, when everything is just it needs to be timed out because of television, right? I'm really curious what Eddie and Jericho were doing in the ring, trying to buy time so those guys could come in. But again, and then Blackpool Combat Club, I thought was done with this because the team element was kind of done with blood and guts, but sure enough, here they still come out like Jon Moxley coming out to defend Eddie Kingston with, Claudio Castagnoli and Yuta, and you see because Santana, they've all got to come out, and they're down a guy with what they originally started the story with, so they have to borrow from the BCC, and that was the other thing that I mentioned before. Like, when's the last time you saw the heavyweight champion, the guy, top guy in a company, come down as backup?
It doesn't happen very often, but it only happens in this company. Page has done this, right? Hangman Page has done that, coming down. He's done that, but it doesn't happen often in other. Like, you don't see this WWE, but if you come in AEW,
I think it's different if like one guy as the champ comes down because he's still the champ and he's the star, right? Because this is the best we have to offer. This is our best guy, but like to be lost in the shuffle of like 4 other people down there. I think that's what caught me off, because you should be elevating this guy and treating him, and he was in a throwaway tag match last night and a throwaway end of the show type thing where he comes out to try to save his buddy. Like, that's
a bigger topic. Like, the interim champion has been in the middle of the card several times. And I understand it's interim. I get that. But Takeshita, I guess that was one match, and then this tag team match the other night on Dynamite. It's like, he's the interim champion. Is he not going to defend the championship? He's a heavyweight champion. Interim. Waiting for CM Punk to get healthy. So, okay, whatever. But obviously, I'm just very disappointed. Neophyte mark booking on the part of Tony Khan to allow this to happen. I'm sure he's fine with it. I'm sure. I did not see what the rating was for it. All I know is that it was that, and then of course on top of that, we get it. It's Shark Week. We get it. Every segment.
Hey, that I can look past, because you got to do what you got to do, and you're a little unsure about your future with the company. Hey, we're team players. We'll play along. Whatever you guys want to do. Like, I can look past a lot of that, given the unique situation of the merger going on within Warner Media and like the uncertainty of, do these people like wrestling? Are they going to like AEW on there? So I can understand trying to play ball in the way the monster that is Shark Week, which has honestly kind of jumped the shark, in my opinion, not to make a pun about it, but like,
of course
I can understand.
Of course you'd make that pun. You're from Milwaukee, the home of the Fonz.
Hey. But like, I can understand playing along with a lot of that, even if I didn't understand the reason why you said swimming with the fishes, to the guy who I even forgot his name at this point, who was wrestling for the FTW championship. I know you've got it in your notes, fighting Ricky Starks earlier in the show. Making that, like, I understand all of that. I can certainly look past that, but it's tough to look past some of the booking that happened in that championship match, because not a championship match, in that blow-off match, because I think it had potential to be a lot of, be a classic AEW type match where they've had these barbed wire, but they had the barbed wire death match, the exploding barbed wire death match that ended up being a dud because of the way it ended with Eddie Kingston, and where he tried to go protect Jon Moxley because the pyro didn't go off. So it turned out to be not great. They recovered well from that. But this is another one that it had opportunity, it had potential. And because the ending, it's just meh, kind of falls flat.
Cole Carter.
That's his name. Shout out to Cole Carter.
He sucked too. I was just disappointed. It's just a bad Dynamite. It just was, from top to bottom. It was just not what I thought it was going to be.
There was one good thing. FTR's promo was awesome.
Yes, it was.
That was it. But that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. Which, by the way, then like also builds the excitement a little bit for Ring of Honor. I think that was the most attention Ring of Honor got. They got some different backstage segments in there as well. But FTR being out there to, give the promo about his daughter and saying he's going to fight the Briscoes like an 8-year-old girl was a fantastic line, it was fantastic. And man, those guys are so over, and they just find a way to, like, just when you think, oh man, these guys are great, they find a way to just click it a little bit higher every time you see them. They're just on such a heater right now. That was the only really positive thing I think out of Dynamite last night.
Yeah, Mike from New York, the Foul, says that AEW should stay away from barbed wire matches from now on, and asking us about the Darby match. Well, I mean, what's different than what we saw? I mean, with the Darby match, I mean, it was kind of the same moves. He only got about 4% of the offense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it did put over his opponent in a big way.
Yeah, Brody King got over, certainly. Yeah. I mean, and they've been building the House of Black. I'm curious to see what they're doing there. They had the Redeemer. Miro looks like he's next in line to be feuding with the House of Black, so that could be interesting. I'm always excited to see something that they give Miro, and those should be good matches. It'll be interesting to see if they tell a good story. But the thing with the Darby match, it was just kind of there. Like, it wasn't special.
Yeah.
It wasn't special. I mean, it was a decent, like, if it happens within the context of a really good show, like, you're not really going to talk about it. It happened with the context of a really bad show, and obviously we didn't bring it up other than Mike just kind of mentioning it in the chat.
So he's good enough to beat Darby Allin, but not good enough to beat Jon Moxley. They did have a match, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, because Brody King won the whatever they called the Battle Royal when they had the 2 rings on Rampage.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it was fine. It was just there. But just the rest of it, I just think that a lot of it just superseded, the good on that show. So we'll turn the page on this, but that neophyte booker they got in Tony Khan has got to figure this out, man. You just have to figure out the details, Gabe. Like, don't waste my time. I don't want to waste my time and watch Raw for 3 hours. Seriously.
Yeah. They need to start booking towards All Out. They've announced All Out. They got the tickets sold for All Out. They need to start the build. You need to have, again, take. It seems like, Hangman Page, as over as he was, he's just kind of wandering in the back, kind of hanging out with Dark Order. But Dark Order is also, they've lost a lot with, in terms of wrestlers that they've lost and haven't renewed contracts. So now he made a save there. I think that was on Rampage on Friday night.
No, you saw it on Dynamite. He saved.
It was. That was on Dynamite. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the Butcher and the Blade were going after a couple of guys from the Dark Order, Johnny Hungy, and his tag team partner, his buddy. Yeah. But I thought he's better than that. Like, yeah. In other words, like, Butcher and the Blade are going to be at some point baby faces or be part of that group of some sort because they're stale. Butcher and the Blade, when they first came on the scene, I saw the Butcher. I'm like, golly, like, that's a guy in the 1970s would have been making money. He would have been all over the territory with that look, those that mustache, that look. He looks like a butcher. Like I said, that guy could be printing money back in the day. But yeah, their act has gone stale too.
And I understand they're kind of waiting with Adam Cole. Who knows? My guess is the reason why they haven't started any feud or build for Mox is maybe they're hoping that CM Punk can be back for All Out. I guess I assumed that Punk wouldn't be back in time for All Out. But I guess that was just an assumption. Maybe they're holding out hope, but they need to start that build. I mean, it's going to be here. You've got 7 weeks or so before All Out is here. I think you need to start making that push, and hopefully it begins next week. And they can bounce back from this show.
We don't have ROH here to blow the whistle because we've gone too long.
Yeah.
But I had to get it out, man.
No, you had to, man.
My wife, I can't tell her about this. I got to talk to you about it because I was not happy about the show last night.
I can't wait till I go home tonight. Honey, you would not believe how upset Jay Hood was about Dynamite last night. He was fired up.
Seriously.
Well, we're going to stick with that company-ish. We'll go AEW adjacent, and we'll go to ROH. Death Before Dishonor is coming up on Saturday nights. We're going to be checking it out. Claudio Castagnoli is going to be challenging for the World Championship of ROH against Jonathan Gresham. Should Claudio Castagnoli be the new Ring of Honor World Champion?
I say yes. I think that would be fine because now it's a name that you know. And I think you laid it out for us last week, Gabe, when you talked about the matches that Claudio has been in where he deserves the opportunity here. I mean, so he's part of Blood and Guts, and he had a great debut in Chicago where he was completely over at the pay-per-view. He's had a good match against Jake Hager So, I mean, I think that for him to be ROH champion, it comes full circle for him, right? Because he was in ROH, went to the WWE, and if he comes back as champion, I think it'd be great. I think this matchup is going to be very, very good, as a matter of fact, against Gresham. Now, the Gresham thing's interesting. We saw a turn with him being part of Tully Blanchard Enterprises. But once again, AEW has not done a good enough job to explain what Gresham is. I've seen Gresham.
Mm-hmm.
He is a terrific mat wrestler. He does things very similar to Bryan Danielson in a lot of ways, in which he's able to beat you in a number of different ways. He doesn't have a finish. He just beats you, and which I really like. It's very unique for today's marketplace. But I think that Claudio as the champion, I think you could tell a great story there.
I'm gonna just ask a general question about this pay-per-view because I am excited to see it. Like I think the matches, they've got 6 matches listed. One on the pre-show, which will be Allison Kay versus Willow Nightingale. That's the only non-title match. They have Claudio Castagnoli versus Jonathan Gresham, and they have Samoa Joe versus Jay Lethal. World Championship is above the TV title, right?
Well, it's supposed to be.
Why does it feel like the TV title is going to main event this thing? Because they've been building Lethal versus Joe for a while, and Castagnoli showed up on Rampage on Friday, and now he's getting the title shot. And they barely mentioned that match is going to be happening last night on Dynamite.
How about this? What if I told you that FTR and the Briscoes should be the main?
Oh, it should be. Absolutely should be, without a doubt. I mean, FTR is the most – if we're talking about you want to send that crowd home happy, you want to send a crowd home hot, I mean, you put FTR on last. They're the most over on the card.
I mean, I know that's not how Tony Khan books it, and I get the philosophy of having the heavyweight championship match be last, but I've seen Vince put the heavyweight championship up first, and then whatever the hottest feud is, put it last. I've seen him do that before. That's not a problem. As long as you're on the card, it really doesn't matter. But I think FTR and the Briscoes should, and if 2 out of 3 falls, they're going to try to top a match of the year candidate already. Okay, let's see how that works. I mean, it's already a banger, right?
Yeah. Yep. Sign me up.
Yeah, so cool. Like that should be the main, because I don't know. So I don't know how anyone else in that company in ROH is going to beat that tag team match. That's fine, but I think Claudio as the heavyweight champion, though, I think that would work. And this is no shade at Gresham. I just think that Claudio's on a hot streak. Could you imagine the matchups that he could have? We probably could see Claudio and Samoa Joe at some point. But you're right. The Joe thing has been built up a lot because Joe hasn't been around. So Jay Lethal and that group has been able to kind of try to talk this match up in a big way.
So if Claudio does indeed win, does Bryan Danielson need a championship? Because he'd be the only BCC member without a belt. Because you got Wheeler's the Pure, Claudio as the world champion of ROH, interim champ Jon Moxley. Bryan Danielson would need one, right?
Well, you would think so. Or because he's counterculture, I don't need a belt to be over. I am over. And of course, if he gets a belt, he won't want it because it's leather. So he'd want it because he's against cowhide and against leather. So you remember this gimmick, right?
That dude, I'm not gonna lie, low key, like the hemp WWE Championship belt that he had.
Yeah,
I loved it. Like it was like I loved the gimmick. He just owned it so hard and made that special championship. It was fantastic. It was tremendous. It's a great gimmick.
If he has a championship, they're gonna change it into hemp. That's what's gonna happen. I love it, man. I love it. I mean, and I love it for Regal. I love it for Regal because he's with the group that matters, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never at ringside. He's there on the mic, but he provides so much color and so much
just context and depth to this. Like, because if the lack of storytelling is the biggest criticism of AEW, he provides that for the 4 guys in BCC when he's out there on the commentary booth, because he's just so smart. Like you mentioned, when he mentioned during Wheeler Yuta's, during the pile driver thing with Wheeler Yuta during Dynamite, and he's just like, oh, this is why he was able to kick out. This is why this happens. Oh, and when him and Taz like start talking about the technical, like, oh yeah, this is a great hold, and here's why it's a great hold. It educates fans. I love it. And when he's on the mic, and I love all the guys in BCC, so it's usually the highlight of Rampage or Dynamite whenever it happens. Let's go ahead because we are running up a little against it. Our last one one, number 3 in the 3 counts. We move on as the final match for Ric Flair has finally been announced. We finally know what the matchup is going to be. The day after SummerSlam in Nashville, it's going to be Ric Flair and his son-in-law, Andrade. They're going to be taking on the tag team of a guy we just mentioned, Jay Lethal, and somebody we mentioned earlier, Jeff Jarrett. So if you want to look at it this way, you could look at it as Ric Flair plus AEW plus WWE plus ROH. That's what we're looking at on this card. It's unique. I think it's wild that like Jeff Jarrett is doing something for WWE on Saturday, one of their biggest shows of the year, and then turning around and wrestling on Sunday in a match with guys who are under contract with the competition of WWE.
It's kind of like an indie worker going to 2 or 3 shows within the same weekend, right? I mean, first of all, hats off to Vince McMahon for allowing this to happen. I mean, Jeff Jarrett right now is working in the front office of WWE for house shows, for events. I forgot the name of his actual title, but he just got the job recently. And maybe it's one of these things where Jeff told the company, like, I have a list of things I got to do before I can be with you full time. And this is one of them being part of Ric Flair's last match. Okay, so for those that don't know, Ric Flair is my favorite wrestler. And the reason why is because he walked it and talked it. He was exactly who he was. The suits from Michaels from Kansas City. I do remember those promos. I got my suits from Michaels from Kansas City. So he talk about that. The Gator shoes, the $5,000 shoes, the Rolex watch, the personal plane. He lived the gimmick, Gabe. It's not one of these things where it was made by writers in the back at SmackDown. He actually lived the gimmick and paid the price for it, right? And so as a traveling NWA champion, he made the business better. He wasn't just the company champion, just in the Northeast like Bruno. Shout out to Bruno and his 4,000-day reign wrestling in Boston, Philly, and New York. But Rick was all over the NWA loop and all over the country and in Puerto Rico and in Mexico and Japan and all points in between, trying to make the business better. Not just for himself, but the business better, because he was the heel. He was bleeding every night, right? He got his ass whooped every night against just random people in different territories. So he always will have a soft spot in my heart as a wrestling fan. And to see him in his last match, I'm glad it's a tag team match and not a single. I was concerned about that. And I don't know if you saw the video and the build for this, but this man is bleeding over, all over his suit. And he's 73 just to get this match over. Crazy.
So you're going to buy this pay-per-view, right? You're going to buy this event. You're going to see Ric Flair's last match.
Of course. Okay. And it's not even about that match as much as I think that Conrad Thompson put together a really nice card for StarCast. I think he did. I think that the card's going to be good. Is Rick the main event? Yes, it's about him. But I think that a lot of matches underneath will work. What I'm interested in? It's a Jim Crockett Promotions, StarCast event. What's the camera work going to look like, right? How's it going to look? What's the lighting going to look like? Will it look like a dark NWA indie show, like as Brian talked about when he was on the NWA show? Or will this be a really nice production? And how will it work out? Because Conrad Thompson's never been a promoter before. So let's see how this is all going to look, because I'll cover it, and we'll talk about it on the show next week.
Yeah, we most certainly will, because, again, that's going to be July 31st in Nashville as well, where SummerSlam is going to be taking place. We move on and talk about some of the news and notes around the world of professional wrestling, where, once again, we see mainstream sports and WWE combining, as the ESPYs were last night. Cody ends up winning WWE Moment of the Year for his surprise return at WrestleMania. I mean, he was up against, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin, so I was actually surprised, because this is like a fan vote thing, that Cody ended up winning this award, because anytime you see SCSA, sorry, man, Stone Cold's going to win it. Yet it was great, Cody, to see you return, but Stone Cold returning and drinking a couple of Steve Weisers and stunning everybody. But it wasn't. It was Cody who ended up victorious.
So what else do you want to talk about? There he is, Cody Rhodes. But just to take a couple of steps back on that, think about this, Gabe. It's an AEW guy. And he's getting all this acclaim from everyone. Think about this. He comes from AEW, where he's like, you know what, it's just time to leave the territory. It's time to do something new. Now I can be able to have full autonomy of my character. I get my music, I get my robe. I could be able to say belt instead of championship. All the stuff they had in AEW, he brought over to the WWE. And look at the acclaim that he's getting. That's quite a story for him to be able to get that award for the ESPYs when you have a whole bunch of guys like Roman Reigns in there, or Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold Steve Austin, as you mentioned, for him to return, just to have his match against Kevin Owens, and also him being a part of WrestleMania was cool. But Cody gets that award. That says a lot about Cody Rhodes, doesn't it?
I think it really does. And again, hopefully by the time he gets back, we actually have two separate champions, because I have a hard time seeing Vince allowing Cody go over Roman Reigns before next WrestleMania, or maybe even wrestle him at WrestleMania. But I can see Cody's the next biggest star in that company. And I don't think it's particularly close. Take that as you will, but like Roman Reigns is number one, and I think Cody's number two.
Ooh. You're gonna get a lot of heat from WWE fans on that comment. A lot, because again, you're gonna get the Becky stands, and you're gonna get the Bianca stands, and they're not gonna be happy with you. The Brock stands, they're not gonna be happy with that comment.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And hey, I love Becky Lynch as well. We share a birthday, but hey, like it's. I thought you'd enjoy that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I found that out a couple years ago. Oh, Becky Lynch and I share a birthday. Cool. But I'm looking forward to Becky and Belair. I think it's going to be great. But again, for Cody Rhodes to win this award that's voted on by fans, when you had those other wrestlers up for it, to me speaks volumes. And who knows if WWE listens to that, or if they decide, that was 6 months ago, we don't care. It'll be interesting to see what they do whenever he returns from his torn pectoral. Speaking of returns, whispers, rumors, Kenny Omega inching closer to a return. They're hoping he's back for All Out, and potentially when he comes back, part of the reason why we just saw the tag team titles change hands from the Young Bucks is because trios titles could be debuting with AEW. Because the one thing that AEW needs, J Hood, is more championship opportunities.
Oh, great. More championships. Great. Whatever they want to do. I'm just more focused on Kenny Omega and whether or not he's going to be an All Out or not. Does he make an appearance? Does he wrestle? I don't know. I'm hearing that he's getting healthier. But as far as the championships are concerned, look, you have a big enough roster to have championships, and you can put a title on anybody you want. But who's over? That's the question. You put a title on someone, are they over? Really? I mean, that's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I look at it. Like, yeah, bring trios titles and have all the championships you want. But the question is, who's over? It's not about championships. It's trying to build talent and build stories.
Now I want to go through the drill of all the champions and all the promotions to see if they're over, but we're way late. That might be an idea for next week. Like, of these champions, who's actually over with their respective audiences? I think that would be a fascinating exercise. Maybe we should do that next week, especially after there are some potential changes in Ring of Honor this weekend with Death Before Dishonor. All right, before we get out of here, I know we were really negative there for a while because, well, Dynamite wasn't great. But what was your best match of the past week? What was the match you enjoyed watching the most?
You first.
So I go back to Raw, and again, Raw can be tough to slog through sometimes. And I understand that Montez Ford's probably going to be the breakaway star. But the match that we saw with Jimmy Uso and going up against Dawkins, like, I thought that was a great match. Yes, it was kind of the wonky finish because that's what they were doing to tell the story, where the shoulder was up and the referee was out. But, both guys had opportunities when the ref was out. They wanted the guy to be counting. It was both those guys can just go, man. Watching the Usos go is fun. Like, the Usos have all these great tag team rivalries because they can wrestle. And the Street Profits, both of them, I understand Ford's probably going to be the one who gets pushed to the moon by Vince, but both of them can go, man. And I hope D'Angelo, doesn't get forgotten here in the aftermath, whenever that split happens, because damn, he was fun to watch on Monday night.
Someone's got to be Robert Gibson. Someone's got to be Ricky Morton, brother.
Yeah.
Ricky Morton's one is over. Someone's got to be Jim Neidhart. Someone's got to be Bret Hart. Yeah, I'm just like
it's the way. Hey, I understand that's the way it goes, but it just makes me a little bit sad because it was a lot of fun watching him go, and because you know what's going to happen to him. Because look, watching SmackDown last week, I was just so sad watching the New Day. Like this is the New Day's coming out just as, and I understand they can do both, right? Like they're very talented. They can do the comedy gimmick if you need them to do the comedy. They can be the serious tag team champs if that's what you want them to do. And they came out with the comedy thing, and they're in this feud with the Viking Raiders. And my guess is they're trying to get the Raiders over right now because they're presenting them as more serious. Last time we saw them, they were very much a comedy act, but now they're trying to get them over as more serious. And maybe that's what the New Day is doing, but it's like, man, these guys are so good. And Kofi was champ not that long ago. And Xavier Woods got his moment in the sun when he was king of the ring, which is something he really wanted to do. And now we're out here in fake beards and plastic shields.
I saw it. It's like, okay, that makes the kids happy. That doesn't sound like TV 14 to me. Well, what do I know? All right.
What was your favorite match? I tried to be positive, and then I end up going negative with being like depressed about the New Day and SmackDown last week. What was your best match from this past week?
You know what, my friend? It was slim pickings. But
it was tough.
It was tough. But you know what, though? You know what, Gabe? I like a look into the future in SmackDown. I did like Madcap Moss against Theory.
It was good. It was good.
It didn't last like as long as I would have liked, and it wasn't great with the finish, but it's SmackDown, not surprised. But I liked how that was billed by McAfee and Cole. Looking into the future, I thought they had some good action, and my hope is that they keep wrestling. They have a program at some point so we could be able to see the best of them, because on that, Madcap and Theory when we were young. It's not a DVD, but that's special. We can look back at some of their early matches, because in 5 years, I know the company feels good about Moss. I don't expect him to leave the company. He'll have a different name. It won't be Madcap Moss, because that's stupid. But I think that in 5 or 10 years, why can't these guys be main eventers? How come we can't look at them in a big feud? So I like the little glimpse into the future with those two.
It's amazing how much just taking the suspenders off of Moss has made me actually like him. Like when he was doing the comedy gimmick and he's pulling out the suspenders and he's making the jokes as the sidekick to Happy Corbin. It's like, man, I don't know how this guy's going to ever get over, but you're right. That was the one thing on SmackDown. You're going, oh yeah, this guy could get over. Like this is, I see the potential. I see what they potentially like in him. And that was certainly a good, fun match to watch on SmackDown. But yeah, it was kind of slim pickings this week. That wasn't always great. That will do it. I'm sorry. What you got?
I was going to say, I don't see any other news that we can share. The Briscoes are officially with ROH. They signed.
Yeah, I did. I saw that they've got some sort of long-term deal with ROH. So whatever happens, they're going to be with ROH. And just based on the way that they have not appeared on AEW television for the most part, I would expect it to stay that way. Like I don't expect them, even if let's say they win the 2 out of 3 on Saturday, I don't expect them to show up on Dynamite on Wednesday. I expect them just to be strictly ROH, and whether that's through a streaming service or whatever they end up, or if it's just wrestling 4 shows a year for ROH on the pay-per-views that they end up doing. Who knows what they end up doing? But it seems to me that they're strictly ROH, and they're not going to cross over to AEW at all.
All right, we got through the show without Browich.
We did.
Crazy.
Yeah, we somehow made it. Browich will be back next week. I guess he didn't come in for the last, part of the show. Like JR just kind of slides in. So sorry for that,
Hello
for the misdirection there. But if you're a big Browich stan, he will be back next week. Again, you can tune into GKW every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll catch you next time on GKW.
What channel?